The old man hit the glass with his fist. The next moment, the glass heals quickly. The old man has been trapped in this room for 1,000 years. In order to escape, he took out a wooden stick and put it to his head. The target of his threat is the robot in front of him. 1,000 years ago, the Earth was destroyed. The old man was the only survivor. In search of a new planet suitable for human habitation, he wandered the universe for nearly 1,000 years. During this time, the robot was his only companion. The robot strictly adhered to Asimov's 3 laws. The first is to protect its master's safety. The second is to obey its master's commands. But that order is null and void if it conflicts with the first law. And the third law is, the third is to protect its own survival as much as possible without violating the first and second laws. After a painstaking expedition to 56 planets, they finally found a planet that could be considered perfect. It was even more habitable than Earth. Not only was the temperature right, the air was perfect. The old man thought he could finally land. But the robots say the day and night are not well defined. It could affect the old man's health in the long term, and that violates his first law. So he refused to allow the ship to land, and asked the old man to authorize a further expedition to the 57th planet. The old man was furious. He was sick and tired of floating around the ship. For him, the worst that could happen if he landed now would be to lose a few years of his life. But it was far better than being confined to this room every day. Not to mention the fact that he's been sitting in this room for 1,000 years. He'll go crazy if he keeps looking. But for a robot, its job is to keep its master safe. Nothing else matters. The old man knew it was futile to argue with him, so he simply authorized the robot's next journey, to visit all the planets at once. When he found the planet of his dreams, he would wake himself up. After the robot left, the old man had a long dream. In the dream, he returned to Earth. There he finally met his own kind. Before he could be happy, his fingers suddenly trembled uncontrollably. He opened his eyes and realized it was the robot that woke him up. The robot had visited all the planets in the universe, but none of the planets could meet the robot's standards of habitation. The old man was shocked. There were so many planets, but none of them were suitable for habitation. He should have thought of that long ago. For a robot that pursues perfection in everything, how could it tolerate the imperfections of every planet? In his anger, the old man suddenly remembered his planet. They'd been gone for 1,000 years. It might have been restored, but the robot simply refused, because that's where they escaped from. That means it's not safe. The old man was driven mad. Suddenly opened a drawer, and took out a stick. The old man's body was left suspended in the universe outside the ship. Inside the ship, the robot reassembled a new old man, and reproduced the old man's memories in their entirety. It turns out that the robot had already predicted the old man's judgment, and his duty is to protect the old man's safety. Now the old man is even more depressed. With this robot by his side, he can't even die. Looking at all the planets they've examined, the old man had to negotiate with the robot again. He asked the robot if Earth was one of the planets he had visited. After all these years, perhaps new life forms had been created there. The robots, though they disagreed, took the old man's orders to visit the planet they had left 1,000 years ago. Surprisingly, they found a small group of life forms on Earth, and they were just like the old man. The old man became excited. He ordered the robot to land immediately, but in the robot's eyes, it's uninhabitable, so it refused to obey. The old man was speechless. He looked at his palm. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came to him. He opened his mouth and bit off his thumb, and pretended to be in great pain as he asked the robot for help. Just as the robot was about to fix it, the old man suddenly asked, since his body was already in a state of disrepair, it would be better to dump him on Earth, and rebuild a brand new body for him. The robot thought it was a good idea, so he accepted the old man's order. He landed on Earth in his spaceship. After 1,000 years, the old man finally returned to Earth. He looked up. There was a small group of human beings standing on the ground not far away. The old man didn't hesitate to walk over to them, until he saw their faces and was shocked. They were actually a group of people who looked exactly like him. This was not the first time he had returned to Earth in this way. He had been floating in the universe for more than 1,000 years. Inside the spaceship that had already left, the robot reloaded the pistol. He put it in the drawer of the study. Then he randomly selected one of the many heads that had already been prepared, and reassembled a brand new old man. Under the old man's orders, they set out into the universe, the first habitable planet in the universe.